Can an RTX 5080 gaming laptop outperform an RTX 4090 from last gen? Which one is worth buying? I've compared both in 25 games at 3 resolutions to show you all the differences. Both GPUs have 16 gigs of VRAM with a 256-bit memory bus, but the 5080 has faster GDDR7 memory. The 4090 almost has 27% more CUDA, Tensor, and RT cores compared to the 5080, which sounds like a lot, but both laptops have the same 80 to 175 watt power limit range. Having fewer CUDA cores to power might explain why the 5080 can clock higher than the 4090. More power equals more performance. This graph shows the 3DMark TimeSpy graphics score from each GPU at different power levels. And interestingly, at around the 85 to 90 watt mark, the 5080 in red was actually performing slightly better. With both laptops maxed out at their full 175 watt limit, the 4090 in purple was only scoring 2.5% better than the 5080. So although the older 4090 was generally a little better with both running at the same power limits, a slightly higher powered 5080 could easily do better than a slightly lower powered 4090. Laptops with these specs are not cheap, so if we find any good sales on them, we'll add them to our gaminglaptop.deals website. You can save money with that link below. Now, I'm using XMG's Neo 16 to do this testing as fairly as possible, and both were tested with their air coolers rather than the optional liquid cooler, and both with their full 175 watt power limit. But the newer 5080 is paired with a faster CPU and faster RAM. Unfortunately, that's just gonna be a real world difference. RTX 50 series GPUs will typically be paired with newer hardware than 40 series. It is what it is. The Cinebench results show us that there's not really that much of a CPU performance difference. Single core was much the same. Both laptops have 99 watt-hour batteries, and despite other component differences, the newer 5080 laptop lasted 49% longer than the 4090 when running the same game on battery power. A massive difference. The 5080 laptop in red used less power when measuring both at the wall with the charger connected. In 3 maxed out games at 4K, the older 4090 used 17 to 19% more power. Combined with the battery life difference, it's clear the 5080 is more power efficient. This means the 5080 is better in terms of performance per watt, which is how many frames in a game it can deliver per watt of power consumed. There wasn't really a noteworthy difference in temperatures between the two, though the 2025 version of the Neo 16 does have an upgraded cooler, so this isn't a perfectly fair comparison. The newer 5080 in red hit higher clock speeds in all games while also using less power. Both GPUs are rated for up to 175 watts, but in practice, the 4090 was able to use a little extra. Alright, games next. There's almost no difference in Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings. The differences at 1440p and 4K in particular are well within the margin of error range. But things change a bit once we enable ray tracing and upscaling, with the 4090 now having a clearer lead over the 5080. Other games like Alan Wake 2 had much bigger differences. At 1440p, the 4090 was reaching an 18% higher frame rate, the second biggest difference at this resolution out of all 25 games tested. Both laptops get higher frame rates with ray tracing plus DLSS enabled, but the 4090 was still better. But then some games like Space Marine 2 were pretty much the same. At 4K, there's no real difference between these laptop GPUs, and even 1440p is pretty similar. Only 1080p sees a noteworthy difference, despite the 5080 laptop having a faster CPU. The better CPU seems to matter more in some games like Flight Simulator, where the 5080 laptop had its biggest lead over the 4090 at 1080p, while 1440p and 4K were much closer together. Red Dead Redemption 2, on the other hand, was an extreme outlier in favor of the 4090. I'm not sure what the deal is, but based on my testing so far, it seems like this game really isn't optimized properly for RTX 50 series. But for the most part, the RTX 4090 was outperforming the RTX 5080 in most of the games tested. Instead of wasting your time individually talking through the rest of the 20 games tested, I'm just going to quickly skip through the rest of the results on screen now, so feel free to pause the video if you want to take a closer look at any specific game. The reason I test so many games is so that we can get a much more accurate average result from a wide wider selection, which allows us to draw a better conclusion. In other words, more data equals more better. Let's take a look at the average differences next. On average, over all 25 games tested, at 1080p, the RTX 4090 laptop GPU was 8% faster compared to the RTX 5080 laptop GPU. A handful of games were a little better with the newer 5080 laptop, likely as its newer CPU makes a bigger difference here. But ultimately, most people aren't buying this level of hardware for 1080p gaming, so let's move on. At 1440p, the 4090 was now 9% faster compared to the 5080. Red Dead Redemption 2 is still a massive outlier in favor of the 40 series GPU, but even without it, there's a clear trend showing most games doing better on the 4090. At 4K, the 4090 was still 9% faster on average, similar to 1440p, but 16 of the 25 games now had a 10% or higher FPS boost on the 4090. That's not nothing, but it's also not a huge performance uplift from the older 4090. Here's how things look if we average the FPS from all 25 games together. This makes it really easy to see the differences. Yeah, the 4090 is better, but it's not that far ahead. The 5080 laptop was still close to averaging 60 FPS at 4K, and it could potentially provide an even smoother experience. Of course, I'm talking about multi-frame generation, which is one of Nvidia's biggest selling points for the RTX 50 series. But I think they've overhyped it a bit and used it to mislead people. Look, I think frame generation is a useful feature when used correctly. And according to this investigation by Tim from Hardware Unboxed, that includes single-player games that aren't latency sensitive with a base frame rate of 70 to 80 FPS prior to generating extra frames. And most of the games that I personally play fall into that bucket. So when I play games on my computer, I put frame generation on and I don't think about it. For me, it offers a better experience compared to not using it. But at the end of the day, it's simply not fair to compare AI-generated frames with regular rasterized frames and pretend that the two are equal. The visual quality and latency aren't the same, so it's just never going to be an apples-to-apples comparison. Not to mention that either of these laptop GPUs can run pretty much any modern game at 4K with just regular DLSS upscaling, so I wouldn't say multi-frame generation is a must-have anyway. And only the newer RTX 50 series has access to that new multi-frame generation feature, which basically just means it can generate more AI frames than the 4090. Both laptops can use FrameGen in the 2x mode, where one frame is generated for each real frame. But with multi-frame gen, the 5080 can also use the 3x mode, where 2 frames are generated per one real frame, or the 4x mode, where 3 frames are generated per one real frame. And more AI-generated frames with multi-frame generation will mean more visual artifacts and even worse latency. Again, it still can definitely be useful while playing games, as long as your base frame rate's high enough and you're not pixel peeping at everything that's happening in the game while you're playing it. But I don't know if that feature is enough to go for the 5080 over the 4090, which again can still use frame generation 2x if you really want to generate frames. But what about the price difference? Prices of both will change over time, so check the links below the videos for updates and to see if there are current sales. Because if any gaming laptops with these GPUs do go on sale, we'll add them to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the best sales, so make sure that you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. Right now, in July 2025, it's quite difficult to actually buy an RTX 4090 laptop. Best Buy doesn't even have new models in stock anymore, while they start from $3,500 over at Newegg, which is kinda crazy. Meanwhile, laptops with the 5080 start from $2,500, so significantly cheaper. Just for some context, on the deal site in the past, we've had 4090 sales from $2,200 to $2,400. So from a cost per frame perspective, the 4090 at current prices just offers terrible value. But if you can still hunt one down on sale, it is better value, because in this case, it's cheaper and performs better. But if not, the 5080 might be your only option. So considering that you can't really even buy the 4090 laptop anymore, I'm left wondering why I bothered even making this video. Well, I still think it's useful to find out if a current gen 80 class GPU can beat a last gen 90 class GPU. But the answer in most cases is no, unless you count multi-frame generation. But what about RTX 5090 laptops? I've compared the 4090 with the 5090 over here, and the 5080 with the 5090 here. So you can see what the differences are between these two laptops and the higher tier 5090 before you empty your bank account. I'll see you in one of those next.